Hello, I'm David from Germany. Welcome to my channel Polyglot Reading, where I mostly talk about classics written in English, German, Italian, Yiddish, or French, which I've read in their original language and which I would like to bring to the attention of readers in other languages. In today's video, I would like to introduce you to the short stories of the Italian writer Dino Buzzati, using one of his most famous short story, Seven Floors, as an example. Before I started to learn Italian, I had never heard of Dino Buzzati, let alone read anything by him. I think among the Italian readers he is well known and most famous for his novel The Desert of the Tartars, which I've also read and which is clearly his masterpiece. However, he was also a very prolific writer of short stories, and actually I think that this is where his very special literary gifts are. I have read about 50 of his short stories, and I consider many of them as real treasures and masterpieces of the Italian literature. What I would like to present to you today is the short story Sette, Piani, Seven Floors. It has also been translated under this name Seven Floors into English, and it's a very short piece of literature, less than 20 pages, but of a density and profoundness which gives it a lot of weight. There are a couple of anthologies of Buzzati's stories available in English translation, and this particular story is usually included, so I think this is a good starting point for a video that is aiming at making you familiar with this fantastic Italian writer and his works. A short warning: there will be spoilers ahead, but I think this is not a problem for readers of this kind of literature, because this is neither a detective story nor an adventure novel where unexpected plot twists are the key for the entertainment value. So the plot of the story is actually very simple and can be told in just one single sentence. The protagonist, a middle-aged man named Giuseppe Corte, is admitted to a hospital for consumptives and dies there after a couple of weeks. So the type of his illness is not explicitly stated as being consumption, but it can be deduced from the symptoms described and from the setup of this type of clinic or sanatorium. This clinic is organized in a very peculiar way, and I quote from the original text but by my own translation into English, because I don't have an English translation at hand. The sick were distributed floor by floor according to severity of their illness. The seventh, that is the uppermost floor, was for the very slightly sick. The sixth floor was for those whose illness was not serious but not to be neglected either. The fifth floor was for more serious grades of illnesses, and so on from floor to floor. On the second floor, there were the very seriously ill ones, and for those on the first floor, there was no hope at all. End of quote. Another piece of information that is important for understanding the end of the story is that on his very first day, Giuseppe Corte learns that on the first floor, for the terminally ill ones, most of the shutters are closed, and this indicates that someone has just died in these rooms. This setting of a sanatorium specialized in the treatment of consumptives immediately makes us think of other literary works such as Thomas Mann's The Magic Mountain, but I think this is just a rather superficial or maybe even coincidental resemblance or parallelity. I think that actually two other very different literary works are referred to here by Dino Buzzati. First of all, Buzzati is an Italian, so he must have been aware that this will be read also as a reference to Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy, in particular the part about the Inferno, the hell, with its ominous motto, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here." Also, because this Inferno is also organized into a number of distinctly separate sectors or circles, each one with its own rules, tortures, and demons. And it is exactly like that in the sanatorium. There are the 7 floors, and again, I quote from the text translated by my own, hence, The sick were divided into 7 progressive castes. Each floor was like a little world of its own, with its own special rules, its own special traditions. And since each area was entrusted to a different doctor, there were slight but noticeable differences in the methods of treatment. End of quote. And the reader soon realizes that also for Giuseppe Corte, like for those who enter the Inferno, there is no hope. At first, he is assigned to the 7th floor because his illness is categorized as being just a very light one, but he soon begins his very rapid descent through the 7 floors until he lands on the 1st floor as an agonized man who still, until his very last moments, does not fully admit the deterioration of his condition. And this descent happens in a way that immediately brings into mind the works of another author, a German one, Franz Kafka. To me, this hospital seems to be a true Kafkaesque system, where the protagonist is completely at the mercy of some inscrutable and unpredictable and insuperable mechanism that control his destiny. The first transfer from the 7th to the 6th floor is explained to Giuseppe as only a temporary change, just a courtesy to a lady with a child who wants to be on the same floor with her child together. So hence Giuseppe Corte agrees to that transfer, but he clearly expects to be able to return to the 7th floor after a few days. But instead, he is quickly subject to transfers down and down the floors, always under new and very unclear pretexts. Each of the transfers of Giuseppe to the floor below surprises him, and it is not clear, even to the reader, whether the transfers are just some administrative mistakes by the bureaucracy of the clinic, whether they are actually justified by the severity and deterioration of his physical condition, or whether they are actually malicious measures inflicted on him by a nefarious system. And as I mentioned before, the story ends with him being transferred into a death room on the 1st floor. I quote from the text: "The sliding shutters, obedient to a mysterious command, descended slowly, closing the passage of light." End of quote. The story touched me strongly and made me think a lot about its literary value and in particular about its meaning and what the author is trying to express here. On a superficial textual level, it is quite impressive to see the minimalist means that Buzzati uses here to create the very particular atmosphere of this sanatorium and also to describe Giuseppe Corte's struggle for his life. But on a deeper level, this story of less than 20 pages prompts really to some very essential questions, I think. So, for example, why does Giuseppe not rebel more resolutely against the system? So why does he not really fight for his rights? And why does he not leave the clinic once he sees his life endangered? And is he really that terminally ill, or has he been just deceived by a nefarious system that is fundamentally designed to lead to death? Has he subconsciously resigned to his fate without realizing it fully? Would he have had the chance to give his fate another direction? Why does he waive his right to resist and to rebel? And is the whole story, is it a parable of our world and lives? Are we readers also trapped in a world of determinism where we can do nothing to change our destiny? Or is there a true will for us humans? Do we have the possibility to shape our lives? And are we just endangered not to make use of this right and of these possibilities? Are the forces of fate and the social system in which we live so strong really to make us helpless? Or are these chattering life coaches right, who are all over the internet promising that anything goes, any goal can be achieved, and it's just a matter of willpower, of the right method to send your message to the universe or to subscribe for the causes they are offering? The truth will be something in between these two extremes, but I think we will have to find out for ourselves. The story does not give us any prefabricated answers, and I think good literature as well as good philosophy does not give us ready-made answers as a sort of panacea, but it helps us to ask the right questions in order to work out our own answers, to shed light on our lives and our plans. Buzzati achieves this with less than 20 pages, and this is why I consider him really a master of Italian literature, in particular of the short form, very much worth reading. If you are sufficiently fluent in Italian to read the original text, I would recommend this nice volume of his masterworks, published by Mondadori as part of the series I Meridiani. This is a sort of reference series similar to the Library of America or to the French Bibliothèque de la Pléiade. So this contains more than 60 short stories, also 3 of his most famous novels and longer pieces of prose, and much more. It's printed on onion skin paper, so it's still a handy volume despite its 1,500 pages. But if you want to go for an English translation, I provide some recommendations in the information section of the video, also for some cheaper volumes. So that's all for today. Thank you for watching this video and babbling to my very personal thoughts about this exemplary short story by Dino Buzzati. I would be eager to know whether you have already read something by Buzzati, maybe even the same short story, how you think about it, whether my questions and my thoughts resonate with you. I'd be very happy to enter into a more detailed, more profound discussion with you in the comment section. So that's all for today. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye-bye and ciao.